enough surprises for us already to chew on. But glad everyone is doing well, and yeah, let's delve in. Uh, Technology trends, obviously made worse by COVID. Just want to share. First, I'll give kind of a high-level background of some of the key trends, and then some of the what those key foundational trends are driving with respect to consumer behavior and changes in policy and where most of the growth is happening. And then I'll go a little bit into how that ties into the changes and the evolution of emerging markets, for which obviously now the whole of Africa is one, and some of the changes that we're seeing and where people are making impacts. So I will give people kind of a broad understanding of the space. I've kept it very broad without going into very many specifics because at this point, I'm technology agnostic when it comes to this trends with emerging markets. One company is not necessarily all better than the other. There's a mix and match. At the end of the day, it's about total cost of ownership and what you're getting from the platform versus what you can pay for. So at a high level, say over the past, say, 5, 10 years, and also over the next, say, 5, 10 years, the core technology changes are obviously cloud and edge computing. We're now moving from kind of core infrastructure, which is typically in the data center space, more and more to the edge, which is closer and closer to consumers because a lot of the technology solutions that are now coming to the market are not very require very low latency. And so the edge is transforming how we view cloud computing to start with. Machine learning and artificial intelligence, this is the wave of the future. I mean, with so much data and now having the tools and the ability to mine that data and automate actions, it is transforming, foundationally transforming how a lot of sectors will be viewed and how we actually go to market on a lot of solutions. Connectivity, I think we're now down to probably the last mile issues, but most of the globally, we're mostly now connected. Last mile obviously is still an issue in some places, and penetration of devices is also still inching up, but that trend is exponential. And then consumer access growth. This is almost the democratization of people having access to both devices and connectivity. Is now no longer a status thing. It's almost like it's almost like foundational, almost a human right at this point. And that access by consumers is driving kind of the trends of what consumers want. So based on those core foundations, some of the key things that are being transformed and obviously accelerated by COVID around the overall digital transformation are education, the education space, obviously with e-learning, particularly here in the US where the universities have for the longest time found a way to extort huge sums of money from people and just offload people in the market, not necessarily with the skills required. That space is ripe for disruption, and that disruption is actually in progress with e-learning. Health, COVID has shown us what we always knew, that the disparity in healthcare is massive and the access is very limited. And telemedicine is at the forefront of kind of breaking down those barriers, particularly in emerging markets. And emerging markets have a lot of advantage because they are not necessarily tied to some of the legacy infrastructure, which means they are not tied to some of the legacy problems or trade-offs that have to be made. They can just simply go from where they are direct to cloud platforms and direct to solutions and skip having to spend money on a lot of the legacy technology, which is not adding value, which will not add any value to them. 5G and IoT, this is obviously automation, ties in well with machine learning and artificial intelligence, smart cities, everything is now about devices and sensors and end-to-end automation. So that is another big one. And then the last piece is in the financial services, very ripe for disruption. The era of just banks squeezing you for fees left, right, center. A couple of technologies are on the actually in the market and on the horizon that are challenging that foundation. So that's kind of a high level overview. Now I'll jump into a few more specifics. So when we look at the overall, let's see if I can make this bigger. When we look at the overall infrastructure space, now talking all the way from the data center, which is at the back end, to the devices, which are on the front end. This is how you can actually think of it. The data center at the core, now edge is beginning to redefine that space, and that edge feeds everything that is then coming up. So all those APIs, all those Internet of Things, automated vehicles, and all of that. So this is kind of the trend. So the one of the key innovations that is currently happening now is around the edge. Because typically the data centers are deployed, built in, say, very remote areas where they have a lot of access to land. You're talking 100 to 300 acres. They get connectivity there. Power is cheap, or the climate is relatively cool so that they don't need to spend energy kind of cooling servers. They're just simply pulling in cold air and cooling the servers and things like that. But with the current applications coming to the market and the future trend, the distance from the data center translates into latency, which doesn't really allow some of those scenarios to come to bear. So the way it's being solved is you have your data centers, and then you have these edges that are being built across all the cities, now leveraging 5G that is coming up, because now that throughput is pretty fast. And then based on that edge, those solutions start rolling in into the market. So at a high level, this is kind of the key evolution and growth areas. Okay. So at the end of the day, this is kind of the high-level technology stack for most cloud services and solutions that are tackling kind of key issues. At the very foundation, you have your data centers, your edges, your points of presence around the world. Obviously, these are your Amazons with AWS, Microsoft with Azure, Google with Anthos, Google Cloud, Oracle. I'm not exactly sure what Oracle has these days. And Alibaba and the rest. This is where the core investments are. And there are only a handful of people in this space, because this is actually physical infrastructure that requires very high capital to enter. Not only the capital, but then the time to actually build that infrastructure it's just a grind. And that foundation is mostly there globally for use. And then on top of that, you're building kind of the access and the security and the integration by independent software vendors and all of that. And those two bottom layers then serve as the building blocks for say small businesses or startups or anybody to then come and deploy their creative solutions. So some of the creative solutions are, for example, e-health, e-government, that's all that telemedicine, e-learning, and all of those things, data intelligence, business, business insights, and all of that. So this is actually just the 9 out of 10, 9.9 out of 10, the technology stack. So the work has already been done in the two stacks below. And most of the innovation, at least on the consumer and enterprise side, is on the consumption side, which is, okay, what do you build with on top of the solution stack that has been put in place? All right. Now, since we're focusing on emerging markets, these are kind of the typical constraints you see with emerging markets, or what has been infrastructure, which is at this point mostly solved. I know there's last there are probably a couple of smaller markets that, because of their size, they have to depend on getting their infrastructure solutions from outside their borders. But by and large, most of the globe is covered and expanding fast for the raw core cloud infrastructure that is needed to do anything. The next key one, which ties to the infrastructure, is the connectivity. I think we are down to the last mile now, which is, yes, your big cities have this connectivity, but extending those connectivities from the big cities down to the last mile, almost like getting to rural America, which even the US is struggling with. That is the current challenge with that connectivity access. And then obviously overall cost, but cost has been tumbling globally for the past decade, and will continue to do so. Now, power is a unique one. Obviously, Nigerians are no strangers to kind of power issues. But without this power, I mean, without power, you're not even in the game. This is core enabling infrastructure at the end of the day, and without it, it's an uphill battle. And then government policy. For example, around privacy with the EU, around data sovereignty with the countries that can actually afford it, and things like that. But enabling government policy, because these investments are capital intensive, and typically people would take the risk on the infrastructure side if government policy is unstable. So these are the top key constraints globally, but particularly painful in emerging markets. Okay, so I'll now delve into kind of a little bit of Africa. But when I look at Africa, it's no different than all the emerging markets in Asia. So when I use Africa, I can easily replace it with emerging markets. Well, besides the numbers that are unique to the African country, because emerging markets are all in the same place. We have emerging markets in Europe. Most of Asia is still emerging. They're still in a kind of a greenfield state where they can leapfrog technology and go directly to the latest technology without having to build out legacy infrastructure. But in Africa in particular, Africa is all about mobile first and cloud first. For a combination of there was nothing there to start with, or it was very limited, or very little penetration due to the capital intensive cost, to the cloud now changing the dynamics. Obviously, COVID has really accelerated the transition to cloud. All the kind of excuses that enterprises used to give, hey, my data might not be secure, or one thing or another, all of that is out the window with COVID, since you need your people to still be active. Smartphones, I mean, those ones have now gone from a luxury status item to just commodity. So that's increasing the access and consumer growth. The data traffic is through the roof. Obviously, we know very well about MTN making money hand over fist in Nigeria and all the other telcos, particularly across emerging markets. For the bigger markets, the telcos are mostly stable. The growth is not as significant as in emerging markets. And then looking at the ICT spend all around the digital transformation. And then the last piece, which is fundamental for Africa in particular, is just the population growth and the youthfulness of that population growth. And I'll go into more details, but these are kind of the key things that stand out from the African context. Now, when you look at Africa, Africa is organized kind of regionally. When you're speaking kind of key investments, technology growth, basically the key regions: West, East, North and South. Nigeria on the West African side, South Africa in the South, Kenya and Egypt. Those four countries essentially account for most of the growth and technology investments across Africa. So as each one of those key regional market grows, obviously the effects will spill out into the region, but these are the anchor countries in each of the regions that are driving that growth. And you can see obviously the penetrations, the investments, the GDP, all key indicators that support technology trends and investments. So I talked about data connectivity, and this is dated. There are probably about another 3, 4 submarine cables that have landed all across the continent. So for the most part, we're connected all around. And the current challenge is around kind of the last mile, now going inwards to kind of the next level, from the state capital, the next biggest city, and the next smaller city, down to the local government level. What the data connectivity is exploding, and that is obviously driving kind of key trends. And something particular to call out is something like mobile money. It is transforming emerging markets because the traditional banking business model does not lend itself very much to consumers, not bleeding consumers of one account fee or the order, and and things like that. And so mobile money is one of the huge trends globally, particularly across Africa, that is driving based on a lot of those solutions being built because infrastructure is there. Now, this one is critical, especially for Nigeria. This is the population growth of the world. As you can see, Africa's population is not only the youngest, but the fastest growing as well. So as the rest of the world kind of ages, the African youth are actually now just coming into their own. What does this mean from kind of a holistic picture? Yeah. Population growth and age feed into the workforce of the world. So with everybody else aging and African population just coming up, we have a unique opportunity here, if our leaders decide to get their acts together, to make sure that that youth and that workforce is empowered to kind of lead the pace when that population trend actually, because it's already here. By 2025, where we're seeing kind of the massive swing for the working population being in Africa, not India, not China, but in Africa. So one of the key things, if we stand up to this challenge, or we continue to just bleed with our stupidity in policy and infrastructure and enabling just the human capital, this has potential to be either great or really bad, or wasted human capital or enabled population that would significantly transform the economies across the continent. Right. So I know I mentioned some technology leapfrog scenarios, kind of key things that we're seeing, and some of the wins in Africa. So you're looking at, say, mobile money penetration versus credit card penetration. You're seeing that it's almost a no-brainer. So taking credit cards and more penetration of that across emerging markets is not going to get there. We are looking at solutions on the mobile money side, things like Alipay and Copa in Kenya and some in South Africa and Southern Africa. It hasn't really picked up much in Nigeria, but the trend is pretty clear. Also, from a device perspective, you can see the mobile penetration. Desktops are not a thing in emerging markets. I mean, they're there for heavy workload and compute, but most people are consumers and creating things on the fly. So that trend that ship has left. So with mobile money, as you can see, I think for Kenya, it's probably up to 50% of their GDP that actually flows through mobile money transactions. which is raising significant issues because some of the telcos actually now have more banking customers than all the local banks combined, and the banks are turning around and say, but you're a telco, you're not a bank. And so that's where government regulation and kind of the stifling of technology, do they get enabled? Do the telcos get enabled, or do the banks find a way to, to strong arm and stiff arm the telcos from actually enabling consumers and breaking away from the traditional banking model of open an account, pay fees here, left, right, center, and be tied to one provider or another. Meanwhile, mobile money is kind of breaking the back of all of that and transforming that that space. So that's the end of my deck. That's kind of the high level end to end and some data about Africa. So I'll open up to kind of questions around that, questions concern how we see ourselves positioning or anything along those lines. You all still there, right?
Any questions?
Yeah, yes, we're here. We're here.
Yeah.
I'm actually just jotting down stuff. Most of what you said is actually making sense because I'm trying to make inroads into this kind of certain markets in Nigeria. I'm sure you do recall that I actually had something actually ongoing in Nigeria via my truck business and all that. And at some point, actually, I tried to do it remotely. I tried to monitor most of my trucks remotely when I initially had them, and they're all sold right now. So, but you're making sense regarding this. What do you call it? The mobile entry into the African emerging market. So, you got me right there.
Yep. It's a blessing that the heavy lifting can now be done by somebody else, but the local folks have to leverage that and use it to solve local high value scenarios. Yeah, I decided you raised your hand. Hey, babe, how you doing? Oh, go ahead. You're
Oh,
mute.
hey. Sorry. Happy New Year, everyone, and
Happy New Year.
thanks
That Bim,
for.
that Bim.
It is, yeah. Lugujai, we see you today. Now you we see so. But anyway, we'll catch up offline. Let me not drag everyone into our murky business. No, great presentation, Kassim. Great insights. One of the questions I have, how much work has been done with regards to the behavioral components, especially in emerging markets and especially in places like, Africa, Nigeria specifically?
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing, obviously having the technology, having the underlying infrastructure, but then there's also the underlying kind of behavioral issues you have to change, especially when you look at consumer, kind of consumer behavior, and and some of it ties to infrastructure. So again, you look at e-commerce, for example, in a place like Nigeria, where finding addresses or just the comfort of I'm paying someone online and I'm hoping I get my stuff.
Yeah.
At places like Microsoft, I'm just curious. Is there much emphasis on those aspects, or is there just an assumption that look, we'll provide the technology and this would happen over time? I'm just curious in terms of how you guys approach that.
Yeah, so it has shifted over time. It used to be that, hey, we'll provide the technology and they'll just, they'll come, and mostly we ignore the kind of the small markets, small to medium markets. If you got the large enterprises and you're bleeding them for cash day in, day out, why even bother about everybody else? But I internally and a few other people kind of drove a change in conversation to say, you know what, with our core goal to enable the market globally and not just key enterprises, we can be making decisions outside of emerging markets and hoping that they'll stick. Because number one is we really don't know what those, we probably know, we have some insights, but from a practical day-to-day conversation, we don't understand solutions for those high-value scenarios that are unique to local markets enough to step in and solve it ourselves. So the transition has now been to, you know what, rather than having engineering teams in the US or Europe think about these things and come up with a solution that is dead on arrival, build engineering talent and teams in these countries, right? And so Microsoft sponsored an initiative where right now we now have a core engineering team in Nigeria, in Kenya, and in South Africa. Before it used to be just all sales teams. And what those engineering teams are doing is, because they live those scenarios every day, they are coming up with unique solutions to those problems that we wouldn't think of in our wildest dreams. And then you extend that platform to then meet how the solutions that they've come up with, and that's just a marriage made in heaven. So we've transitioned from throw it over the fence and hope it works to go into the market and let the market innovate, taking away kind of some of those, do the heavy lifting on the back end, the infrastructure, the construction, bring the engineering talents to bear to solve those problems. Does that answer your question, Adisa?
No, absolutely. So that makes a lot of sense. So it's literally creating local solutions, right? I mean, let the solutions be the local people can think of the social issues because they're local. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and after we did that, I mean, Google has been in the market, but Google has also established engineering centers. As I said, now, when you're viewing Africa, you're viewing it from a region: Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, South Africa. So Google has come, IBM has come, and I think from the work that we're doing at Microsoft initially is saying, hey, the market is big enough for everybody, so we're not trying to stand alone and build talent alone. We're saying, hey, let's collaborate in kind of building this pipeline, almost like a shared fiber backbone that if the connectivity explodes is benefiting everybody, as opposed to everybody trying to build their own in a very, very difficult environment like Nigeria. So it's really a partnership, but the engineering on the ground needs to be local in order to drive local innovation. You're not going to win trying to pull some random app from here in the US and hope it works in Nigeria.
That makes sense.
Hello, Oga Kassim. Thank you for your presentation. Victor Shaku here.
Hey.
Yeah, just a question. So, I mean, you've been talking about bringing in those local, going to the local markets, right? And you did talk about the constraints when it comes to infrastructure, maybe all these integrations and stuff like that. Are we having those? Is it edge? I think you did call them edge. I think that I want to believe those are more like availability centers, right? Do we have them in Nigeria, Kenya, and all those places that will kind of lessen the cost of all those infrastructure and stuff like that?
Yes. So the edge. Think of the edge like. Almost like your cell tower. It's not the full-blown data center solution. You're just caching your data sometimes locally, like what Google does and Facebook does. And then because it's your edge on the back end, you can then have your very high capacity private subsea cable fiber to your core backbone, so that your edge is at least performing relatively okay. So yes, in Nigeria, Kenya, Egypt, South Africa, there's edges for everybody has an edge there, but the edges are typically in the big market. So you're talking Lagos, Abuja, probably Port Harcourt, but most of it is concentrated in Lagos.
Thank you, sir.
I do have a question. However, I see Kingsley's on phone, so I'll wait for him to ask it.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Oga Kassim. Beautiful presentation. So you showed in one of the slides just the population projected growth for Africa, and if I want to be more specific, Nigeria would be probably around 400 million by 2050. And what are your thoughts around just outsourcing a lot of these jobs in countries like Nigeria, where, with that kind of population growth, the job crisis would only worsen if nothing is really done. For example, you could be talking to customer service for Google, and the person, answering you like is in the Philippines, but you hardly, have anyone that, is in Nigeria. So, things like, customer service, things like data annotation that is being outsourced from Silicon Valley. What activities are going on, and what are your thoughts around just preparing the populace for those sort of outsourced jobs?
Yeah. So I think the trend starts from typical outsourcing at the bottom of the ladder, right? You outsource your kind of data aggregation, you outsource your data labeling, similar to how India grew, similar to how China grew. You outsource making the screw, then all of a sudden you say, okay, these guys make screws well. Okay, screw it into this bolt, and then they do that and do that, and okay, you give them a little more for things that you have considered non-value added in your side and outsourcing it to a cheaper country. So Nigeria, as we stand today with our population growth, we should have been way down that road for a while now, but a combination of just ineptitude, government policy, and just flat out, I don't know what the word is making kind of the investors shy away, because at the end of the day, nobody wants risk. Right? Nobody wants to be dealing with up and down. You're here, you're there, you have power, you don't have power. Nobody's going to come there and come and build your generators. Well, MTN does, but they're making money hand over fist. So nobody wants to come and do that heavy lifting. So the local countries have to provide the enabling environment, which is a combination of policy, key infrastructure like power, education, and things like that, for all those add-on services to then be impactful both to the world and to help grow the local population. So we have an opportunity. Is either going to be a blessing or a curse? The population is certainly there. Population is not something you can change over, say, 50 years, but it's already established. You can't all of a sudden start making more babies by default. So we have the population, we have the youth. I believe like 60% of the youth in sub-Saharan Africa is under the age of 25 or something like that, some ridiculous number. And so if we don't invest in those youth and enable them to be able to take on those jobs, the jobs are not going to come.
Thank you. That makes sense.
I can't raise my hand because I'm host.
Okay, go ahead. Your question?
All right. So let me ask you, this might be a little tough, or maybe it kind of brings you down. I think it's actually on top of what Dr. Kingsley just asked. How can we strategize and position the junior airmen in AFMS so that we can have more people get into technology and have the skills necessary to start making a difference right out of AFMS?
I think one of the key things is you have to lean in on the curriculum. The curriculum has to be one that is practical, direct line in what you're learning to what is actually required in the marketplace. And it's never too early to start. So from an AFMS perspective, supercharge that curriculum, provide them the infrastructure that they need to leverage, because you have to be on a level playing field. FMS is now not just competing with what's that?
Sam Murumba.
FMS is now not competing. Yes, not competing with Sam Murumba. We are now competing on a global scale. You're competing in India, in China. And China is already doing that. They're already at the forefront. So enable with the education, enable with the connectivity, because again, the information is there, and that will set up the FMS guys to hit the ground running. And it has to not go into just only, hey, learn to go work for somebody else. No, it has to be, hey, the mindset of starting small businesses, taking some of that risk, Enabling kind of, that's where you have your angel funds, angel investments to say, hey, if you come up with a unique idea, we can sponsor you. There's a fund. Some of it will fail, some of it will win. But building that enabling environment is how we can enable AFMS Jam to hit the ground running and really make a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kassim, mine is just a very quick one. It's about security. You know, with these emerging markets, like you rightfully said, you know, I don't see why they can't move databases to somewhere like Nigeria. They have good weather anyways. And I'm wondering, what are the security concerns regarding that situation for Nigeria to start having data centers being like a DC2 side of kind of thing, you know, a Center 2 or whatever they want to do? What are the concerns, or what are they trying to do to bring that up into somewhere like Nigeria?
So the issue is not security.
No, what I mean security is not local security. I'm talking about security along the platforms.
Yeah, the issue is not security along the platforms. I think we are in a pretty comfortable place with security. Obviously, we need to keep improving. I think Google in the last quarter just came up with a new technology for being able to process your data encrypted, right? So the security trend had been encrypt your data at rest, encrypt your data at transit, and then when you need to process it, you need to decrypt it and process it. But now with this technology to process while still encrypted, I mean, you can steal the data, it won't make much use, or it will not be of much use to you. The problem in the emerging markets is a problem of investments and enabling environment. For example, I worked to strike a lot of deals with data centers around Asia. When we are establishing data centers, you're talking, I don't know, in the order of maybe 250, 200 million over 15 years, right? In just the data center infrastructure and the servers and the network equipment and all of that. But Microsoft is not going to go to Nigeria and go and try and solve Nigeria's power problem, right? So,
but would it not be cheaper though?
Cheaper to do what?
Set it up, 200 million in Asia, like you rightfully said. In Nigeria, labor is cheap. Other things that is concerning towards that market structure.
You buy diesel.
So it's not, the 200 million is the way data centers are, 20% of the cost goes to kind of the cold shell, where you're building kind of the key data center, which is just concrete. And then 80% of the cost is actually your IT equipment, right? And then outside of that, you need supporting infrastructure from the country, your host country you're in. Do you have power, right? Because we're building 100 megawatt data centers, 50 megawatt data centers. In the smaller markets, we're going for 5 megawatt data centers, or maybe 10 or 15 with ability to expand really fast, right? And so Microsoft is not in the business of power, and they're not going to come and try and solve your power problem for you. If you solve your power problem, then you enable the conversation of, okay, I can deploy a data center in this market. Then my problem is, okay, what size of data center can this market bear to make sure that I guarantee a return on investment because I'm taking a risk, right? So if the emerging markets solve those key problems, policy problems, core infrastructure problems like data center, the connectivity problem, as I said, private industry has solved that, but power is a heavy lift. And the government is typically the person that can absorb a lot of that initial lift to enable the entire economy to grow. And we are doing a piss poor job in Nigeria. God knows that one.
I thought Beam and Joshua Ghana were solving that problem for us.
Okay, we still rely on policy. I mean, it's a myriad of issues, and I mean, some of it is structural. I mean, it's just knowing what's right and not doing it. I'll give an example. I mean, Kassim mentioned all these. I mean, you're spending $250 million, and 80% of that is equipment. It's not bricks and mortar, right? So that means that's $200 million. It doesn't matter whether you're in Nigeria, Kazakhstan, or wherever you are. That $200 million is $200 million, right? So if you're charging for those services locally, you need to make that $200 million, right? So it's not cheap. It's the same thing as providing good healthcare. And look, there are cheaper ways to do it, but I think one of the biggest banes of power in Nigeria has been having a cost-reflective tariff. Where anytime they lift the tariff, people will make noise. And I know there's a chicken and egg. You have to have the service, but until we're true to ourselves and we understand that, look, we have to pay for what we're using. If it means not leaving your AC on when you go to work so that your living room can be cool when you get back, well, you learn to adjust. But we've not learned that. And I think we're kidding ourselves, and then the people in charge are kidding us because they're telling us what we want to hear. So, and then you have the secondary issues like policy. Again, if you're sinking hundreds of millions of dollars into a market where you don't even know what your foreign exchange policy is, or it can change, or you can have zero access to getting your money out, then, I mean, why would you come to Nigeria when you can go to Kenya, Ghana, or wherever else that it's easier? So again, I think what we don't realize is we have this massive population, but we're, like Kassim said, we're competing with the whole world. So, I mean, apart from those of us here that have a vested interest in Nigeria, I mean, most people are not looking at Nigeria that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, that is true.
So, if I may ask a question.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Kassim. This is Tony Ekmayong. This is a follow-up to the question that Coyote asked. Like he said, how do we enable the XJAM in AFMS right now? Just maybe if you can drill a little bit deeper. You mentioned, getting them. It's not, I guess, just not education. They can do other things, but maybe can we be more focused on what they can exactly do? I mean, it's still a boarding school. It's still a military school. What exactly can they do right now while they are there, not when they get out? What exactly will prepare them? So you mentioned, for example, Microsoft having engineering centers. Let me be more specific. For example, I heard, I think was it the 90 sets or something, put in a computer lab or something. Mm-hmm. And the first question I had in my mind, okay, a computer lab has been put in. What are they learning in that computer lab? So could we be more specific in saying Microsoft, Google have engineering centers? What are the skills that are needed in those engineering centers? Presuming those kind of places will keep growing. And how can this, just as you mentioned, it's never too early to start. What can they start learning right now in AFMS then?
Yeah, so I think first is when I'm talking about kind of technology in the American markets, I'm agnostic to which company it is. I think competition is good for everybody, whether it's Microsoft, Google, heck, any company that's even a no-name one. So I'm agnostic to technology platforms. What we can do now, as I spoke earlier, was the curriculum. I know a lot of sets have gone back and done investments. We know there's now a solar panel, that power that gives power. So a subset of that power issue has been solved. There's now the computer lab. You have to focus on the curriculum and put them on par with what their peers at the top institutions across the world are learning, right? Because that's like ground zero. So are they learning and are they getting, they're equipped, but are they now learning the curriculums as good as the best school in, say, Boston, Massachusetts, or in Beijing, China? That is what we can do now. Make sure that curriculum is up to date and the teachers are aligned, and that at least gives a level play, that levels the playing field for what they can do now, and then the infrastructure and the supporting services are there, and the sky's the limit from there.
Yeah, thanks. And I had other comments. The issue of power, and people like Beam are definitely ably working to solve that problem, and I commend you guys for that. I think that's That's a problem has been there for a long time. But it looks like from all what you're saying, there's a little bit of it's a little bit of a conflict, a dissonance in everything I've heard. On one hand, we need enabling infrastructure. On the other hand, it seems like Nigeria, in spite of the government, is moving forward in some fashion. Now, could the pace be accelerated? Yes, but it looks like Nigeria is still moving forward. So it is a global. I understand there's global competition, but I'm also hearing that we have to solve the local problems have to be solved there. So what is hitting my head means that if Nigeria is supposed to hit 400 million people and the problems have to be solved locally, it looks like the global thing is a little bit overhyped then in some sense. Maybe I'm wrong.
So I think when you look at the what helps economies grow, you're looking at small businesses, people innovating, people taking the risk. And that risk is based on the return on investment. Now, Nigeria's GDP is piss poor for the amount of population that we have, which means we are dependent on external borrowing to keep afloat in the key sectors, right? The resources are not limitless and they're not necessarily there. And as I think I've been mentioned, if I have $200 million and I'm going to go recover my money in Indonesia, guaranteed over a 5-year period without having to monkey with me building my own power plant and doing work, thankless work that I don't need to be in, why would I come to Nigeria? Right? So while Nigeria has the population and has the smarts, I mean, we're all here. There's no concern about how smart the people are. Intelligence is evenly distributed globally, but opportunity is not. The goal is, how do we enable the creation of that opportunity? You can have smart people all you want, but if you don't have the opportunity, they might as well be farming cassava in the bush, right? So from an investment perspective, that enabling environment and government policy is foundational. You don't do that, it really doesn't matter what you have. This is just, risk reward. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I get that, and I just wanted to point out that maybe I'm trying not to be glass half empty for Nigeria, because just as you also pointed out, MTN is somehow getting their power, and as you pointed out yourself, they're making hand over fist money. So somehow they've been able to work out the risk reward ratio for Nigeria. So I know the conventional wisdom will be that Nigeria should put these things in place, but it's still funny to me how I see things still going on in Nigeria and things are still growing. I do agree with you. Our GDP is not the best compared to what our population is, but it seems things are still moving forward somehow.
I mean, they're moving forward somehow, but we can't survive on somehow, right? Yes, MTN is making money hand over fist, and God knows they took a big risk and they are rewarded accordingly. But not everyone has that kind of stomach. Mm-hmm. Right across from MTN, look at all the kind of retail businesses that came in from South Africa. I don't think there's any left now. The last one probably just closed down. Maybe there's one person left. They all failed one way or another. Woolworth and all the rest. The market conditions in Nigeria are unforgiving.
Yes, they are. Yes, they seriously are.
Yeah.
I think, I see Oga Tony's perspective, and I think probably maybe part of it is, in spite of this, what can we do? I mean, that may be, that's how I kind of think of it. None of us are government policy people here, and we have minimal impact in terms of influencing some of the big picture things. I think the frustrating part is yes, there is progress, but that progress is happening at such a slow pace that in the overall scheme of things, you just don't see it because it's just like tiny drops, right? You have for every MTN, again, when we have hundreds of millions of people, lots of unemployment, underemployment, income per capita is something like what, $2,000 a year or less than that. It's hard. We need to move that needle very quickly, right? Before it becomes a bigger problem. But to say on the glass half full side, you do see innovation. You're encouraged by. You go to Yaba, you read about companies like Paystack, which is just a couple of guys who, innovated. And I think we shouldn't, despite. Look, I'm jaded, so it's hard for me sometimes to be, buzzing about Nigeria, but it's also good to see those glimmers of the Paystack, who two guys started a company, from nothing and sold it for $200 million. Not that money is the end game, but that gives you, that company employs people and they're going to be around for a long time because, the guys who bought them aren't going to just shut it down, right? So if we tie it back to the AFMS thing, these are the things that, for me, we should be making sure the young people know our possibilities. That, look, if you're going to AFMS now, your goal isn't just to come out and be a doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those things are good, nothing wrong with them. But the world, Mark Zuckerberg is pretty much the quasi-president of the world because he just told the president of America to shut up, right? 15 years ago, he just from his dorm room started a company. And those are the possibilities that exist today. So for me, the power problem is not easy to solve, and we're probably not going to solve it quickly. But I think getting the kids in AFMS to see, equipping them, those of us on this call, getting on and engaging directly with them virtually, right? So that they can see these possibilities that, look, again, it's all great to go to MBA and become a whatever. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that. But the world is so vast these days, and there's so much more that even in Nigeria that you can make happen. I think that should be kind of our goal.
Yeah, certainly. And I said, we even here at Microsoft recognize that there's talent. There's no question, there's talent. And that talent is innovating in spite of all that pain. Why go through all that pain if you can solve it and make life, rather than growing at 1%, you can grow at 10%. It's just so infuriating. Take, for example, our roads. Last time I was in Nigeria, I was in Cross River State. Now the connecting road from Cross River State to Akwa Ibom State is supposed to be a 45-minute drive. I spent 4 hours on that road because it wasn't a road. It was just a series of trenches you had to drive slowly through. I spent the whole day on that road. Could you imagine the productivity I could have been doing? Imagine somebody trying to get their onions to the market. Because at the end of the day, small businesses actually run the country, not the big businesses. There are a handful of them, all good, but small businesses. The market woman selling onions, the person growing potatoes here, getting it from the point A to point B. Do they have enough roads good enough roads that they transport those goods and they don't get rotten before they get to the market? What is the leakage rate? What is the drop-off rate? You're basically killing a lot of just the raw grind of intellect locally because of just piss poor policy.
Yeah, that road is that's a soft spot for us from there. So
but some of the things I think Bim mentioned this, and I and a couple of my friends, we kind of started an angel fund and say, you know what, if you have an idea, which is something we can do, especially as we build the folks up at AFMS, come up with a fund and say, hey, if you have an idea that you think that can scale, that will make a difference, hey, you have the seed funding to make it into a company. We'll sponsor you, we'll take care of the infrastructure, you focus on the innovation of your thing, and we'll run the numbers and see if it's something viable. I think that's another thing, because ideas are a dime a dozen, but if you can't fund them, nobody hears about them.
And that right there actually might be I think that actually might be a major idea in making, in basically, as we say it with Nigerian English, in gingering the boys up to be able to see that, look, there is there's something of value in going in the direction of technology. So for example, one of the things that gets us excited here, if you think about it, is the fact that we know that, or rather we have it at the back of our mind, that if you have an idea and you start building it, that when it comes to funding, you will not have a problem getting funding if the idea is good, right? So sometimes we're willing to dig into stuff here. If we start to give that impression, or actually start to make that happen in a place like AFMS, that look, come up with an idea, right? You have people who will help mentor that idea and grow it into something, and that if it's really a good idea, you could get funding. I think that's enough for the kids to actually start thinking, or their creative juices to actually run.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, I put in the group chat a high school program that Microsoft has here. The question is, how does one get this kind of high school program running in Nigeria or somewhere in Africa, for example?
If I may chime in with a question, is it possible to have a forum like this with the CI academics of AFMS?
I don't see why not.
Like, look, what the heck are you teaching the kids? And I know Nigerians will be defensive, but it's like, look, let's have a conversation. We're here to help. Yep. You have alumni in Microsoft and all these big places. I mean,
actually, we have alumni in Microsoft. We have alumni in IBM, right? And we have alumni in, where else? Those are the two ones that I know. I mean, technology-wise. Well, what am I talking about? We have Tony Ekweong, also of Qualcomm, or former, basically. So basically, we have alumni that actually can show that it is worth the investment, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, but I see why not. Maybe the leadership of XJAMS, those are one of the things we should be driving. I mean, we're making a lot of investments in the school. Having a critical conversation and asking questions is the least they could do to hear us out and tell us what they're doing and how they are positioning. Those kids are the best from across the country. We should be enabling them and to ensure that they are learning what needs to be learned and growing from there. So yeah, that's a good suggestion, Adisa. I think that's something the leadership should take up.
So Oga Kassim, what do you think about, what are your thoughts around digitization of government? Because I think some of the things that we're talking about, like in terms of impediments to technological advancement, is just the fact that people cannot really deal with the bureaucracies that has to do with just dealing with government. I mean, we still have the whole colonial system of like folder passing to folder, from table to table approvals. So I can imagine that some of these big companies must have approached the government to digitize it, because obviously my thoughts is that would really drive investment. If a company wants to communicate with government, they are just easy processes. But as it is right now, it's just tough. And I've dealt with the system a lot, so I know.
Yeah, so the data is a gold mine, and we are sitting on it in shelves and stack and papers that are getting burnt down or getting flooded one day after the other. So yes, across Nigeria, we're sitting on so much data that is inaccessible. Anybody that so much as has the patience, enabled by government policy, let's take the health sector, for example, and you're able to digitize all the medical records from 1911 and get that online, or at least in a database where you can run data analysis and unleash machine learning on that thing. I mean, do you know the range of problems and insights we could gain from that data? Whether it be health, whether it be education, I mean, it is massive. You know that one of the key ways in which flu is tracked here in the United States is how much cough medicine is sold at Walmart, right? We think of these things as totally separate, but these things are totally integrated. Walmart is in every nook and corner. If the number of people that are buying cold medicine indicates, okay, flu has exploded in this place, it's on its way to X. Here's the origin, there's the origin. Then you have that data at your fingertips, you can start doing magic. But I don't know. Again, from a policy perspective, we need leaders who take these things seriously and enable these things to be done. It's as simple as saying, hey, University Teaching Hospital Ibadan, all your students in your free time will employ you and pay you, I don't know, $100 an hour. Take this stack, scan it into a database, label it accurately, and it will transform things. But it's hard. So I think I keep telling this story to a few people. Some of the a couple of years ago, some of the governors, a couple of governors from Nigeria came here to Microsoft, and I hosted them here. I mean, it was piss poor performance. I mean, we got VPs aligned. I mean, the technology stack, the brain power. I was there by like 6:30 a.m. in the morning waiting for these jokers to show up. At 10:30, governor with his big belly is showing up. Oh, yeah. I mean, I almost lost my shit. I'm like, 10:30. I was like, okay,
Because
okay.
who told you he came to listen to you at Microsoft? He came to shop.
He came to shop at Mason.
Sheesh, I already know.
10:30 he comes with like, okay, all right, let's start. Okay, we have a few hours. We've now further cut the presentation. Okay, we don't have enough time for this. Okay, he sits down. We introduce them quick. We start going. At like 11, maybe like 11:25 or something, the deputy governors asked whether we have a television because Nigeria is playing a match.
Yeah, but that match is very important.
Kassim, I'm sure you're kidding, right?
I'm not kidding. Guys, these are your governors.
He's not, man. He's not. Believe me, he's not. Jeez.
I mean, that question just took my knees out.
I mean, Kassim, you even said that the governor of Washington State sent a representative, and they were kept waiting for like hours, right?
Those guys kept the deputy governor of Washington State waiting for 4 hours.
Wow.
These guys don't respect time, people, or anything for that matter.
Wow.
So at 11:25, remember this guy came at 10:30. He wants to watch soccer game. We say, well, no, not exactly. No, okay, we all agree. Okay, we'll keep on. By 12, these jokers are hungry. They eat. We come back. We're about to start again. By 1:30, they're like, governor is tired. He will retire to his hotel. I'm like, what the? Meanwhile, this is each governor has one person holding his agbada, one person holding his briefcase, another person holding his pencil. These jokers are everywhere. Like, what is the value of all these idiots? How much did you just spend? And here you are, you just wasted so much resources, everybody's time, and you're looking like clowns. I mean, it was infuriating. And so 2:30 days, your governor, off he goes to his hotel room to go and sleep. And then leaves you with commissioners who don't even know their left from their right, who are asking about used computers. I'm like, guys, you have an IT budget. Why are you asking me for used computers? Is that the conversation we're having here? How Microsoft can give you used computers? Really? Are we in the used computer business? We're talking foundational policy here, and you're talking me used computers. Are you mad?
You've lost them right there. You've lost them right there.
So Kassim, I guess it goes down to also what Oga Beam and Oga Tony has said. I think it's more like individual and collective efforts, and then at the same time waiting for and hoping for better leadership, because the guys at Paystack, I doubt if the government had any influence on them to have built such a company that employing people, and now it's exited. So it's so things like practical steps like how do we get CI academics to join the call and to brainstorm and think about how to sort of start building people from the early stage. I think that will really be helpful, because if we keep looking at the leadership, it's going to be there'll be no real hope looking at the leadership. So I think it's high time we start making both individual and collaborative efforts in pushing the needle forward a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. I don't think we're necessarily waiting for leadership to do anything. I think you can look at the various initiatives that have been executed in AFMS, the solar, the computer lab, and other things, and what has been achieved in the private sector, particularly in, say, for example, like the financial industry and things like that. So yeah, these things are happening in spite of leadership. The establishment of the Microsoft, Google, and IBM technology centers in Nigeria, all of that happened in spite of leadership. When other people had done the work, they then eventually came around and did that, and obviously leadership showed up for a few press photographs and raised their hands and things like that. But this innovation is happening with or without them. We're good for them to step in, because they can have an exponential effect on some of the work that is being done. But without them, work will still happen, but it could be better with them.
Even better still, I think is it the director of education for the NAF? Is that not like a former commandant of AFMS? Does anybody know? By any chance, is it not Ogumbi or so? If I remember from the last BOP. Well, the reason why I'm asking is that
Ogumbi has retired.
Oh, he has retired. Okay. The reason I was asking is that I was thinking that even from a wider perspective, the equivalent of an online Zoom session where we can pull former, maybe former, or maybe just present, the education core of the NAF, and have these conversations that, okay, in terms of direction, first we want to say this is what they've produced over time and show what they've produced across, and then basically to say, well, here are the trends, and that if they are still going to be leaders in producing top quality professionals, here are areas that we think they should start working into the curriculum across the board.
I would actually go slightly further and say, look, maybe we form I don't want to sound bureaucratic and say committee, but I think maybe we have side chats. I would say we figure out what we want to do, what we can do, and what's feasible. And then we call them and tell them, this is what we would like to do. You don't have to do anything, just enable it, get the kids to show up. And when we're taking picture, you will be there as the champion. So you take all the credit.
Yeah.
I don't want to sound disparaging about, and look, there are very fine people in the Air Force and in Nigeria, but it tends to be more the exception than the norm, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And when we get into this, we're going to present our ideas, you have those who wouldn't understand it, you have those who push back for whatever reason. I would say, let's not even get into all that. So say, look, this is what we're going to do. This is how. We just need you to tell the kids to show up at this time, or tell us what time they can show up. Like I said, we will put it under you. You will be the person taking all the credit.
Yeah.
We'll take picture. You may even get whatever from America to give you. So because they need to be gingered as well, as much as it's for the kids.
Oh no.
And then we bypass all that. Otherwise, we'll be presenting to them in 2023, and some guy will now tell you, they need approval they need to write to somebody to do something. I mean, even the solar project we thought, I don't know what the 90 cent experience was. I mean, they nearly stole the thing because just to get someone to like sign the freaking thing, excuse my French. It's like, geez, guys, we're not asking you for anything. Just to let us go and build. It's like, well, got this one person. Let's just cut all that and just like, look, this is what we're going to do. We need the kids to show up. Tell us when, and we'll give you the credit. You can come and take picture when the kids graduate.
Okay. Makes sense actually, because Nigeria likes the what's in it for me. So if it's going to help somebody's career, they'll be willing to participate fully.
Yeah. And something like the kind of the curriculum for high school curriculum. I mean, that's already been there, done that. There's education professionals we can lean on to borrow, reuse. United Nations has done a lot of work on it. So yes, I definitely agree with Bim. Show up, clean baby. Hey, you do all the dancing in the front, give you enough beer, while don't disturb us in doing the work. And the results will be there.
All right, I think we should take this back and try and work something out.
Yeah, and that's on one hand. And another one is again this these angel investing funds. There are people that have come up with very creative ideas for some of the local problems that are unique there. Again, these are not things you can come up with if you're not living it day to day. But a lot of those people are stifled because they do not have the funding to execute on those ideas.
So just a chime, and I was going to introduce this at the appropriate time on the broader forum. A group of Africans, includes one other ex-jam, are actually working on an angel fund for Africa. It's an angel community. It's modeled after, there's a group in Chicago here called Hyde Park Angels. The idea is like people join and have membership. So more to come on that. But again, you hit the nail on the head. The funding and access to funding is a big one. And I mean, there are already some avenues. The Andela guy has a fund as well. So, I mean, hopefully there's starting to be more of this. But again, that's something we'll post hopefully by the end of this quarter in terms of for those who want to or are able to join to be able to kind of, pull capital into that.
See, it strikes me that we actually have the whole channel in place. What I mean by that is that we have the expertise to basically say, all right, it looks like this is a good idea. We have the expertise to say, okay, let me mentor you guys to build this thing that you're talking about. And then we actually have the expertise to basically say, okay, this is a good idea. This is how you get funding. This is where to go to. So we just need to put this thing in motion and start to bring out our own Zuckerbergs from amongst those very smart minds that they pull together from across the nation every year. That's all that is left, actually, when I look at this. When I always come up with grand ideas.
This has been actually really fruitful. What can I say? So there's really so much to talk about in the grand scheme of things. There are just so many industries actually one can actually go into in Nigeria. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say that you're going to try to bypass or actually go over policymakers, or I don't know what to say honestly. Someone who's had the experience actually working there over an 8-year period, it's quite daunting. I'd like to hear someone like Adisa actually come up one time, and I don't know if you've done it or Adisa, maybe give me your own experiences in the power sector and all that, but I'd like to say things actually looking up and are awesome, but goodness, man, as far as 3 years ago, things were looking grim for me, and in the business sector. It's nice. IT is actually an amazing field. Kassim, thank you for this, but there are other bigger things that one can actually achieve in Nigeria. I mean, there's the agricultural sector, there's the transportation sector, there's the health sector, there's the education sector. There's a lot of money to be made in that place. It's just, I don't know. Honestly, I just don't know. It's the policymakers. I don't know.
Oga Presido, I think I have a suggestion for for our community, because I mean it looks like the theme that is also coming out from this presentation is the challenges people face and the potential challenges in doing business in Nigeria, whether in tech or in other areas. Maybe we could organize like a panel of people that have worked in Nigeria, failed or succeeded, and just sort of lessons learned. That would also
I'll gladly participate. I'll gladly participate.
Yeah, because we all have experiences in Nigeria, whether in government or with other businesses, and it's been nice to just talk about some case samples, and see how some people surmounted their own challenges, and also learn from other people's failures, as it were.
Yeah, that'd be a good one.
Yeah, that'll be a nice one. That really will. Yeah, I could give you a plethora of examples. When I started personally, I started with something, a company, that's about 10 years ago, Digital Options. We were actually in business with MTN and Glow. That thing failed woefully. I don't know if the problem was, well, actually, the problem was more of government policy because each time, and the policy is not federal per se, it's as you move from state to state, the laws, the policies, the people, everything is different from state to state. I recall when I was actually building a mast, I was with oh God, what's his name? Harvey. He was the engineer then. We were building masts for MTN and went to the community. And I just got encountered. I encountered some people with huge muscles like Michelin tire, and they were telling me that I had to pay the community a certain amount of money before I could even put a mast there, which will actually be for their own good generally. Cut a short story short, I abandoned the whole place. I didn't even work on it. I don't know how Glow and MTN actually went about it. And that's just one example. So the myriad of problems that actually face most business people, it's I have to sit down and actually write down a huge paper on this, or probably even a book on this. It's really daunting. I wouldn't actually say the problem is particularly government. There's just a kind of mentality that most Nigerians have. I don't know if that can be surmounted that easily. And then the problems could be regional also, because the problems I actually encounter in places like Adamawa, Plateau, Zamfara are different from the problems I actually encounter in places like Ogun or Shuanago. And it's also different from the problems I encounter in places like Newi. I've been there, yes, I've been there. Or places like Obakiliki. I, it's Nigeria is a dynamic place. So I think, yeah, if there could be a forum that we could actually sit and actually discuss these things, because these things have to be thrashed out actually, so you can understand actually the problems that most small business people actually get into when they're actually on ground, versus actually just making a general interpretation of how Nigeria really is. Because as you move through each particular region, the problems are different depending on exactly where it is that you go. So that'll be another nice talk for another time. And I honestly would like to actually participate in that. That way, you can have an idea of what actually the small businessman actually goes through trying to start something, versus actually imagining what would be if you're in larger markets like Kano, Lagos, Port Harcourt, or burgeoning markets that have actually been there and have been explored by other businessmen. So it'll be a nice topic for another time. I'll yield the floor.
Yeah, certainly. It seems like the the amount of madness goes up with the amount of poverty. It's I mean, every time I jump to Nigeria and I do the Lagos, Abuja, Calabar, Akwa Ibom circle, I mean, just even between Cross River State and Akwa Ibom State, they're essentially the same people divided by border. The Cross River State government has found a way to essentially ruin the economy and just turn it into a dump. Meanwhile, on the Akwa Ibom side, I mean, you make a left into the road to Akwa Ibom, you think you're in heaven. The people are different. They greet you different. They are calmer. It's not. I mean, it's like Did I just walk out of a zoo? What
That is
happened?
that's exactly what I'm talking about, man. You, as a businessman, man, when you move around, you be like, what's happening here? As if it's a movie, man. As if people are acting. It's
I mean, I went to Akwa Ibom Airport. Nobody was asking me for a bride. The plane was clean. The restaurants were working. The people the prices were posted, and everything was functioning. Meanwhile, I went to the Kabul airport, and they're like, "Oh, God, we don't have landing equipment. We can't see." And I mean, yeah, the markets are different, and I think with the work that we're trying to do, because it's easy to lose the time, patience, and particularly funding, is just concentrate on the big markets that are already on a trajectory, a positive trajectory, where subsequent governments are building on each other, and then build from there. Because you run out of funds, it doesn't really matter which market is which if you go burning your money in markets that can't sustain anything.
exactly.
When I think of this, I think of an advantage that I have. So, for example, if I was thinking of doing something in Akwa Ibom or Calabar, I probably would talk to Ikerete. And if I wanted to go to Sokoto, I'll call Farouk Abubakar, who I just spoke to today again, who's been in Sokoto all this while, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is that because I went to FMS, I actually have people who understand the local people in almost every state in Nigeria. So I think that what we need to change in this thing is just the way we think. I might talk to Tony Ekpeyong, but actually I was going to say he's more an Ibadan person, but he does know who he can point me to in those areas that will, that or just like you need a tour guide when you go to places, that will tell you the places to go to, places to get the best food, which is nowhere on any map, nowhere on any computer. That's what those are the kind of innovations I think are necessary in Nigeria to succeed. Let me give you an example. The CEO of Adova is an 81 set, Olumide Adeosun, right? Adova is former BP. I think that's the one that is owned by Otedola, I think. Now, before he interviewed for that job, one of the classmates said, before you go for that job, make sure you talk to Bashiru Haliru. That's another 81 said, who basically works with anything petroleum on the government level in Abuja. This guy is a subject matter expert. So good that he came for the reunion in Houston, and he was asking us that what are we doing here that we're not participating in what's going on in Nigeria, and we couldn't even record that actually because this was information, basically. So we have the network, is what I'm trying to say. And that before you go into a local place, you have also the advantage that there is somebody who understands that terrain. And so, but we're not tapping into that. So we're trying to do it like it's done here. And so we don't get the results because it's a different terrain.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Also, I think it's important for us to kind of start small in almost like a cocooned environment where the likelihood of success is high. Because at the end of the day, you have to be able to invest, get the return on investment, grow in a stable fashion. And then I think, as my grandmother used to say, you only start causing trouble when you're full. So if you build your business, say, in kind of the key markets, say Lagos, maybe Abuja, Port Harcourt, a few of those key markets where things are a little more stable, like Akwa Ibom and Co., and then you have a track record, then you have enough profits to go and gamble in Sokoto. But if you go and start your business in Sokoto and you get wiped out, you become like my friend here who has sworn that he will never go to Nigeria even if they kidnap his father.
I don't blame him.
Yep, he was like, Nigeria, sign me up. I'm done. The guy has been ruined already, so we don't want the Sokoto experience.
I saw a video of So they were smuggling. It was, basically it was supposed to be a negative video that, hey, look at how they are smuggling rice across the border. And in this video, there were maybe like let's put it this way. There were Okada bikes that were going on for maybe like 3 minutes of, footage. So let's assume there were like 100 Okada bikes, each one carrying a bag of rice, okay, in this rough terrain. And then, I just saw that I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is innovation. So basically, these guys can move a whole truck of rice through a terrain that you would have thought was impossible.
Yeah.
That's employment for all those bike riders who were smuggling, right? And so now think of somebody who basically does this, legally. For example, all those farm areas are difficult terrains to drive through, but Okadas can get there.
Mm-hmm.
So which means that you can actually move a truckload of produce from the interior but you just have to use a different technology. You can't take a truck there.
Yeah.
See,
Okay. That reminds me of this thing that I saw in Nigeria when I went just last month. There's this thing called dispatch that's going on in Nigeria. It's a process where you just call and they just come and pick it up. You don't have to face that 8-9 hour traffic. I left Lekki at 10. I got to Festac at 7. Think about that, those hours that I could have just called an Okada dispatch driver, paid him in that 1,000 or 1,500, and have done that for me. So we could actually think of this in a broader view where there could be an app, that comes up and, you have your dispatch riders. The app will send them the signals and the addresses of where they're going to go to, because there's traffic problem in Nigeria and Okadas can, manipulate themselves. I've seen Okada do one way on the opposite side and they're riding like they own the road. So all those craziness is there, but they know how to work it. Like Kassim rightfully said, if people are actually on ground, we're talking from overseas on the Nigeria perspective. 90% of us don't know that terrain. We don't understand the market until some of us or people are willing to. I'm not part of that. Willing to go there and stay there, settle there, and say, you know what, like that dispatch thing. Honestly speaking, it does work and it's working effectively. If somebody can bring the idea of an app and just innovate it a little bit, tweak it one way or the other, that could be a success story like the the telephone system or telecommunication system.
Go-Kada. I don't know if you know of Go-Kada.
No, we could do many more Go-Kada. I could do Kada. Something like that. We could innovate something. Kassim, I want to hear from you on that perspective because I have like 1,000 somewhere that I can keep. I don't have father, so if they kidnap him, it doesn't matter. But after that,
I think that's where the angel fund comes in, where we put our names in the market and say, hey, we are an angel investment fund. If you think you have an idea that holds snuff, hey, bring it along. We'll sponsor you because that is where most businesses die. So if you come in there and you run the numbers and you say, hey, this is my business model, it doesn't have to be conventional, it just has to work in the market. This is my business model. Here's my returns at the end of the day. And we do the math. Math doesn't lie. Math works the same in Sokoto as it works in Lagos. If we do the math, it works. We sponsor him. If it works out for everybody. If he fails, it fails. He disputed the risk, but at least he tried. We learn and we move on to the next thing.
It sounds so easy. Honestly, I've been there and I sat down, especially when you guys talk about the transportation thing. Case in point, I've been into it. So I had trucks and I tried to rig my own trucks with GPS stuff, and I could monitor it from my phone. I could monitor the driver because there's in this transport business, there's so much connivance between driver, mechanic, and the person who's actually selling you the parts. You as the business owner, you can't be everywhere. You pretty much can only monitor, say, the transportation equipment itself. In my own case, the truck. I could see it on the roads. I see it moving. You don't know if the driver will just run into a ditch. I actually went into the truck with one of my drivers. He never knew I owned the business because I actually had a manager that actually had that was running it. So I just tagged along like a normal passenger. That brother, when he comes to a ditch, man, he runs through it. Kai. Again, I want to motor. What the fuck? This is my car. So at the end of it, I didn't say anything. And at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, this guy's no wonder. So you're making so much money. The tires, you're changing tires. 1 minute you go to the market, the tires 50K, Michelin, second hand. The next minute you go in a week, it's 60K. You wonder, are some people just conniving? How do prices just fly in a week? So these things, then you take it to the mechanic, a battery is missing. You sit down, you wonder, how did it actually get missing from the truck? I mean, so there's just a myriad of problems one has to deal with when you're doing certain industries. It's just not actually having to be in, because I've been there, I've actually stayed there. It's just
So when I
don't know.
No, let me come up with something, just an idea, and I don't know if it work or not, but just when I'm thinking of that, I'm thinking that instead, how about if you change the strategy to basically those trucks, you own them when they start, but basically you sold it to them, and then basically, you know how you buy a house, what do you call that one, that you don't have a down payment and you start paying a little more than what the mortgage should be, so that over time you pay off the mortgage so basically
Rent to own.
Rent to own, exactly. How about you did rent to own with them, whereby they know that they own it after a number of years, and if they don't take care of it and they're not able to service it, then they lose everything. So the stakes are higher.
I've tried that model, but you see, it's not every person that is actually patient. The idea sounds modest. It sounds very good. You see, if you buy a truck that's worth 3, 4, 5 million naira, I mean, sometimes it will take time before you actually go through it. You pay for the price of the truck and make a profit out of it. Not all drivers or vehicle maintenance guys have that patience to wait 1, 2 years for them to own it. Some want it now. We have this mentality of, I want it now. Okay, she's not Samu. I want it now. You can't pay for this thing in a year. What are the projects you're doing? Can you get the projects? In some instances, I beckon on them to actually get these projects. And in some instances, I get it myself. Either way you look at it, it's just... So generally, I think the solution for this is you need to have beaucoup d'argent. You have to just have a lot of resources that you can actually have on hand so that it can mitigate against this thing. It would be nice if you even have some form of support from banks, which I try to get. Believe me, that thing is hard. I won't even talk about even trying to look for anyone in government because they're actually out for themselves. So honestly, it's just finances. Because if I had residual income just sitting in there, I could probably mitigate this risk, and I could wait for you to keep doing this. Yeah, run into that thing, that gutter, I will change the tire. We'll be patient with you. Do what you have to. Eventually, you're going to stop all this, but resources have to be there for all that. But if you're a small businessman, it's rough, and some people don't have the patience to wait. Honestly, Nigeria is it's a rough place. It actually is. So the crux of the matter is resources. Honestly, that's pretty much is it.
Yeah, so I see it in two parts. Resources, as you rightly called out, and in the resource front, I think we need to make it palatable by spreading the risk, like a peanut butter on bread. Get more people to spread the risk so that no one person is carrying so much risk. Otherwise, one person is going to die of a heart attack. Spread that risk, find a way to get to the bank or find a way to get to the government who is sponsoring that sector to peanut butter that risk, right?
That's the problem, Cass. That's the problem, Cass. It's easier said than done. Believe me, I have tried it. How are you going to get that person? Who are the persons? Because I'm bringing into 10 million, 20 million. Who am I going to get to measure up? Oh, okay, Bala, I'll give 20 million. Who? I think about this. Who? Nobody wants to lose that money. Nobody wants to lose that money.
That's what I'm saying. We start small. We start small, like
behind it instead. So you just be the Uber, the Uber app for that transportation. So people with trucks will come to your site to basically get these loads where they can get loads, and the people who post loads will pay a fee in order to be able to get drivers to pick up the load, and you just control the technology. That's all.
So let me jump in there, because I think it's risky for us to come up with solutions, and I think that's where we also de-risk ourselves. Let the market come up with the solution that will work for the market. Don't try to say blah blah blah. Okay, you jig this, you put a Jeep. No. You just sit back with your cash and say, you know what? If you have an idea in the trucking business, come talk to me. And then somebody like Bala will start cutting you by 1,000 cuts and say, how do you solve for your battery getting missing and stolen by the mechanic that is supposed to repair it? You put that onus on the sucker to go solve that problem. It comes back, he's like, I found an innovative way. You know what? We do this. Our trucks only go to this mechanic or blah, blah. Look, put the onus back on them jokers to solve the problem that they created. And you just sit pretty with your cash. Don't try and solve it, because we don't spend enough time there to get the local context and solve that problem. It's like Nigerian telling stories, right? It's like when I travel home and say, you know what, I'm going to hide my mind. These guys can't talk me out of my cash. Those bastards would.
They will, man. They will. Shoot. It's like a psychological game, man.
Out of your cash, they will talk you so much. You will go home, find the wallet that you left at home. Give it to these guys. So here's the thing: let the market solve its own problem. Stand back and be pretty. Look, I've got a fund. I'm going to sponsor anybody with the best idea. Truck guy shows up. You ask him questions. How do you solve for this? How do you solve for that? How do you make sure the truck doesn't get damaged? He comes up with different answers. You throw him out. Next. I mean, there will be a million of these guys. Eventually, there will be a core set of people that will somehow come up with an innovation. I don't know what it is, and I really don't care, so long it works and it's trusted. And we say, you know what? That guy has something. Okay, let's give him one truck. Let's see what he's going to do with it. And then he proves not giving one truck. He needs to have invested in his one truck or a 50% partnership. And then he proves that model. And we're like, okay, this model works. And then we invest in the business. So put the onus on those jokers to come up with the risk resolution to a problem that they created. Us trying to say, how do we do this? No, leave all of that. We don't live there long enough to be able to tell these guys anything. So that's where
I'm the joker, man. I'm a joker in this case.
and let those guys, and then as we're sitting back pretty on our funding, then our major problem becomes, hey, talk to the AFMS group and say, okay, guys, let's come up with a fund. This is not charity. We are in business to make money. Okay, let's pool our funds together. So, hey, we've donated and not donated. We've contributed. Everybody has a share. We are sitting on 50K. So we are looking for a 225K opportunities. All right. We put feeders out in the market. Hey, we're going to sponsor a business if you can tell us how your business is straight. And every Saturday, just people come online. If you can't make your pitch in 15 minutes, you're wasting my time. Be gone. If you scale past the first 15 minutes, you're like, okay, that guy's got something, an interesting innovation. He's actually solving a problem, and there's actually line-to-line money from where my money is to where I'll get it back. Okay, let me talk to you next week. We bring his numbers. How much have you invested? Have you talked to anybody? Blah, blah, blah. Then we start structuring a deal. But as far as sorting out how to lift a rock from point A to B, no. Let the market do it.
Makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's hard, Ross. It's hard. Yeah, I can tell you.
Makes sense. And actually, I realized that with or without AFMS in particular, there are plenty other XJam on ground that this pitch thing can go on for on a Zoom session.
Yeah.
Quick question though, like that Okada, that's minimal risk in terms of your money. How do you add technology without having to wait for them to solve the problem? For example, like Ogaki rightfully said, the Uber model, where it's not my bike. My money is just, there's this thing I used to see back in the days here, like 5-7 years ago. It's called U-Shape. All people do is come up that platform every maybe 12 to 2 and say, there's something to be picked up in whatever, any part of the country. The job of that application itself is just to, the seller and the buyer, just put them together and get its own cut. You don't need the jokers or whoever you call them to solve that problem. How do you start in that scale? For you to develop that model to do what you need to do.
So like
And
Uber,
again, don't forget the Nigerian model too.
like Uber, it's always about the risk and the unique solution that absorbs that risk. Uber, at the end of the day, went to a model in Nigeria where they partnered a potential driver with somebody who had a potential car, right? And I'm not sure which arrangement they had on the back end, but the person who was funding the car, I think Uber probably backstopped some of that risk. And the remitting of funds and the payment of funds was in real time, right? You're either performing or you're not. You're in or you're out. I don't have to wait 4 days for you to run, or 4 months for you to run down my car. By day 3, I know you, whether you're a serious guy or not, and I yank you. Again, it's coming up with that local model that actually works, and then having somebody at the end of the day who backstops you with the funding, because you still need the car eventually, which is the barrier to entry with the high funding cost. Then the drivers are a dime a dozen. You're looking for trust on that side. Then you match them together. You incentivize the driver, and you monitor him in real time and make sure he doesn't touch your money with a 50-foot pole. Transactions happening on the back end, totally transparent to him. So he performs on day 1, he doesn't perform on day 2, he's gone. There's zero patience for all that. Look, my grandmom on my dad's side lived in a family compound. He lived with her, she lived with her mom, which was my great grandmom, and then her brother. And then she was always obviously asking for money every time, money for feeding, money. Like, you know what? They'll give her brother a taxi card to drive, right? He will remit X amount per week to his sister, and whatever he makes on top of that is for him. So the entire family is gaining here, right? Okay. Taxi arrives. First month, second month, the guy is making money. Third month, the guy is spending more time at the mechanic than he's spending on the road. all this while, his tummy has gone from flat to, I started projecting.
I'm sorry, guys. I've been through it.
By the fifth month, the guy threw out his existing wife and married a new wife. all the while, every day there is never business, I tell you. Nobody wanted to go from point. Nobody needed a taxi today. So the taxi is permanently not making money, but it's moving though.
So
it is true. It's true. And Ogagbenu, which you're talking about bikes again. It comes down again to government policy. Plateau State, for instance, 1 minute Okada is allowed, 1 minute is banned. 1 minute is allowed in Jos North, 1 minute is banned in Jos South. You're a businessman. It's bad for you. I've been to these things, man. You just be frustrated. The governor will just wake up one morning after eating eba. All of them are banned. I mean,
well, I truly feel you. You know, when I went this time around, honestly, I always refer to this last trip. There are a lot of things I saw that was wrong in Nigeria. Wrong, 100%. I call it my new tourist center because I'll just go there and want to feel like a king with my little dollars. And, you know, then I can get a driver, I can afford it, afford a chef, you know, eat like a king. Then run back after 2 weeks when I'm getting broke. That's the way I see Nigeria. However, when I saw that system, I looked at it internally and I said, there could be a way here. But from what you guys are saying, I'm kind of scared. Maybe I need to follow Kassim's friend's model and just keep his change and, you know, manage it and save because I just don't know why Nigeria is like that. I feel
I don't know. I don't know. Believe me.
For the country. Yeah. There's so much things there. There's so much potential and innovation. You know, I was in a place where I stayed in a hotel And where I was at, when I looked at that place, I looked at it, things actually worked in that hotel. It was the only place I've ever been. Gave them a agbada that was dirty, stained, and they brought it back in an hour and a half for me. Well ironed and well done. Cost me less than $10. You know, so things sometimes could actually work, but the ones that are not working is look at ATM, look at cash process. Everywhere, Nigeria is no more a cash economy. It's not a card economy, and those things truly really work. So I really don't get it, and I wish I could. Honestly, I wish I decided to. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just figuring things out. I've never been to Nigeria in a couple of years before last and this one. Bala knows my story. I had signed up Nigeria totally, but when I went this last one, there's something that is calling me. Maybe it's calling my little change, but you know, I really don't know. I still need. I'm confused, honestly.
Yeah.
I know you, man.
Thank
I
you.
feel you, bro. I feel you. I feel you, bro.
Nigeria
Thank
No.
always, at a point in time, Nigeria always calls people. Then when it takes all your money and sends you back after that, you start.
No,
You have to
but the problem is, okay, can we live here for? Can we continue with 95 every day for the next foreseeable future? It's
Nope.
kind of down enough, and the money we truly have, the money we're all making, whatever we're making and however we're making it, at least 50%. If you look at your spreadsheet, 50 to 60% goes all in bills. You have 40% if you're a good saver. You have 40% to save. And that's not really sustainable if you retire at 60 or 55 or whatever age you want to retire. You
Well,
know, I've looked at so many things.
the
And
thing to
I'm
remember,
confused.
the thing to remember is that nobody said you have to go to Nigeria to start a business. There's the whole of Africa waiting for you to come to. So it's not only the Oibo man that can be the foreign direct investor, right? A Nigerian American can go to Rwanda and start a business, or go to Ghana, or go to Gambia, or any of those places where things are easier and where people don't have creative ways of shutting you down. And when a governor doesn't eat eba so that his head doesn't turn. So, no, but, you know, if you think about it, we always think, this is the mistake I see across the board of Nigerian or North, well, with the West. So Nigerians in the West thinking of going to start a business always think they need to go to Nigeria. But that's the most difficult terrain to start a business in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why do you start from there? Who put a gun to your head and said you have to go there to start a business?
Yeah. It's not limited.
I think the idea is you just want to go to where you're more conversant with. I mean, you know,
You
people.
actually are, that's the thing. That is an illusion. You are not conversant with the place. Otherwise, they will not be taking the shirt off your back.
True. That is true. That is true.
Because if you're conversant with it, you'll be making money hands over fist over hand, I'll be hand over fist, like MTN.
Yeah.
They are conversant with Nigeria. You are not. So maybe you should go to their own South Africa. Maybe you will understand them better there.
Yeah.
South Africa, man. I want those guys to beat me up, man.
Or you can go to Namibia. Or you can go, so there are all these other places around, you know, that are small, that are compact, that they, you know, they are just, you know, they are in quote naive, you know, and they are ready to work.
That's why I said at the end of the day, it's all about the risk. Obviously, we have some advantages in Nigeria where, for example, if they said, put the risk on the market to come up with a solution. If they come up with a solution, we pilot it, we test it, and it's something that is working and it's growing and sustaining itself like a standalone business, that is where our influence comes to bear. We can then come and say, you know what? I'm 2 steps away from the governor of Lagos State. I can now influence policy in this direction.
Yeah.
Now we are using our muscle to help that business grow. If Okada is going to be banned, we're going to find out one way or another based on those relationships, and then we'll start selling off our Okadas and transitioning into taxis. But you have to put the risk of the initial, and the business will evolve. Just because we started Okada doesn't mean we'll remain an Okada business. We might start with Okada and become a logistics business, and from a logistics business, for Sony, for example, their first product was a rice cooker. So it's just somewhere to start to build those relationships, to spread out risk, let the market come up, and you're constantly monitoring the market and constantly reinvesting and evolving, and then putting your muscle based on the people that we know. Our people are now becoming generals and soon governors and all of that. Then we can start influencing policy and aligning. But the market has to take that risk, and they have to come up with that solution. Time and time again, we take a solution here, it's an app, go and open it there, we'll fall on our faces flat. We don't spend enough time there, and even if we did spend enough time there, we are too full to do spending the everyday under the sun with a suit and tie in Ibadan heat. Let somebody, we are too old for that. Let somebody else do that.
Okay.
We sit back, we call the shots, you come to us, and we have people. Here's one thing that trips me. We have people in the banking sector, and people go to banks all day, every day, pitching them ideas to get a loan. Those people can come to us and tell us, here are the key sectors where the government is dedicated to, and here are some of the innovative people that, as a bank, this risk was too much for us, but we think is a good idea. Go talk to that group. We have those people in this, we never hear from people. Everybody is hoarding information left, right, center, and nobody's getting rich. We're too old. We are past the days of working 24 hours and getting rich. Right now is work smart, look for here insider trading for all practical purposes.
That's exactly what Purdue did, right? When he knew COVID was coming, sold all his healthcare shares.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, we have bankers that are actually legit. Every day, everybody goes to bank. Hey, okay, I have this idea. Okay, show me your idea. They're pitching to banks. Banks are probably throwing out 90% of the pitches they hear to. There are some pitches that they hear where the pitches are good, but maybe that the bank was only focused on agriculture or doesn't want to go into that space. Send those guys to us. Look at this sector. The government is sponsoring agriculture. The government is now acting as the backstop. So you've already almost de-risked yourself. They're giving these loans, okay? So we show up with 20%, we get 80%. The government is the backstop. The bank is just transparent in between, man. Who cares if we lose 20%? It gives us a chance to try the market and do what we need to do. So those are kind of things we kind of align, but put the onus on the market. The market can come up with solutions all day, every day. They just need somebody sitting back and cherry picking on the top.
Can you, we're about to, so I can take it offline, then we can just continue from there.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah, so we have the opportunity, we should think and scale beyond just Nigeria and Africa, and it's all about the numbers. Numbers don't lie. Math in Nigeria is math in everywhere else. And we are woefully underperforming with the amount of brain power that we have.